What's up, everyone? We're back for another episode of Locked On Bucks. The preseason is over. Giannis put on another display, which the good news is that now we get to talk about Giannis again. We get to talk about his jump shots again. But I think there was a few interesting things from this preseason finale against the Dallas Mavericks. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. I'm your host, Kane Pittman. You can hear me and see me daily on this show and also find my words over at ESPN and NBA Australia. And joining me, as he does after every game, is the founder of brewhoop.com, longtime voice of the podcast, short-term face of the podcast, Giannis stat lover, Frank Madden. And Frank, this is a good day because last time we podcasted together, we said, let's set, I think, an ambitious target. Let's see if we can get to 1,000 subscribers before opening night. Well, we did that in about the 24 hours after we put out the call. So shout out to everyone that's jumped on board and supported us on YouTube. But we also thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen of every day, wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. We also crossed the 1 million download mark for 2021. We've still got a couple of months to go. Sometimes I just sit here and say, 1 million downloads? There's that, not 1 million people, but there's that many people actually listen to us talk about this basketball team. Frank, what is going on?
Yeah, shout out to all of you for tolerating us and putting up with my quick speaking and hemming and hawing. And I mean, I try to listen to a fair bit of pods, and I'm just like, oh man, I got put in all these filler words, but you guys are great, and obviously it was the most special year we could have imagined in terms of following this team, and of course, very fitting that we would blow through our annual download record early in a year when the Bucks win a championship. We had a few more games this year to talk
Yes,
about,
yeah.
and I we're now doing YouTube, and I think it's going to be hard for me to top the podcast that we did with me calling in from a parking lot outside Fiserv Forum the night of the championship. But yeah, we've settled in here nicely on these YouTube podcasts as well. So seems like some people are watching, and it's been cool. Actually, I was cruising around the comments. Cool to see people commenting and actually having like interesting discussion. I sort of just expect the worst when you go on a new social media platform that the commentary and the dialogue is just going to be terrible. But I've generally always been very lucky, whether it was at Brewhoop, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on now we're seeing on YouTube. Like, I don't know. I guess we're just, for some reason, we attract a relatively sane subset of people on the internet. So maybe I'm jinxing things for us, but yeah, thanks to everybody who watches, listens, and generally kind of has been along for the ride. It's been an amazing one. And I mean, we've been doing this now. Well, I've been doing it a little over 5 years. July of 2016 was when all this started. Thon Maker and Summer League. That's where it all began, Kane. And if only we could be giving this news on the night that the Bucks get a big preseason win, but alas, the Jason Kidd revenge game. Gonna be tough to get a restful night's sleep for me, obviously, tonight after ending the preseason on a loss. No, we're of course kidding. But as you said, I mean, I think the Giannis stuff was interesting, and it's a bookend of the preseason, and I think we can probably maybe we get into, I guess, maybe our more like kind of broader preseason takeaways on Monday, but it's over. It was not the most impressive performance from the Bucks. I looked it up. Offensive rebounding tonight by the Dallas Mavericks. That would have been the second worst defensive rebounding performance of all of last season. I think the Mavs had like 35% offensive rebound rate. It was not a sharp defensive performance in particular from the Bucks. Not a sharp offensive performance outside of really Giannis just making everything. But when you're the champs, and I have my champs Kareem and Giannis shirt on for those watching on YouTube. When you're the champs, like we've been saying, just get through the preseason healthy, and Chris Middleton didn't play tonight. It looked like he was there. It was like some sort of personal issue, but I think the main thing we've been saying: get through the preseason healthy and bring on the regular season. And again, some injuries from the start of the preseason, Semi Ojeleye and Rodney Hood going into the regular season, but I think that's opportunity for Jordan Nwora, who we can talk about. But yeah, overall, preseason is done. Bring on the regular season, and I think Bucks fans have reason to be very excited about this next game, because tonight was the last game that we saw that we will see the Bucks in Fiserv Forum with only one banger hanging in the rafters. So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I do want to get to Jordan Nwora. I think there was some interesting stuff out of the post game as well. Before we get going, I do want to mention here, like, this is my mic that currently is not plugged into the computer, because I've made my third move since we moved to YouTube, which perhaps wasn't the smartest idea, to try and do YouTube while I've helped my parents move, and I've been in 3 different venues. So this is actually my apartment now, but I don't know where the cord is to hook up my mic to the computer. So this is a big source of frustration for me, but hopefully the audio. But I reckon we start.
Preseason. It's the preseason for us too. We're working.
Giannis jump shot fever among Bucks Twitter is at an all-time high. We saw the clips going through. A number of people clipped up the jump shots he hit against Utah the other night. In this instance, he started again with the 3 in transition. Then he went to the turnaround jump shot, baseline version, also went for sort of an elbow free throw line version. And I think that we've seen the turnaround before. We've seen transition threes before. But I think the introduction of the elbow turnaround fadeaway is maybe the most interesting to me, because of the way that he's able to set it up. So if he gets a guy that thinks he's going downhill, he's like, okay, all right, I'm going to shape up like I'm going to take you to the basket. And then as soon as there's the slightest bump, I'm just going to pivot. I'm going to turn around. I'm going to fade, and I'm going to get a wide open jump shot from a pretty generous range from the basket. It's hard not to look. We've seen this before. And Giannis said himself after the game, we just got off the Zoom call. He said, listen, there's going to be games where I miss him. He's like, I can't base this just on the results, because there's going to be nights where I miss them. But it is hard not to get a little bit excited about the prospect of this being even a league average shot for him, because I think we've seen in the last couple of years, he's got pretty good touch on that turnaround. Like, that's actually not a bad shot for him, even though I think for most people it's kind of low percentage.
Yeah, and I think the baseline shot is one I like a lot less than the one kind of going middle. So going from the right block, dribbling into the lane, turning to his right, over his right shoulder there, that fadeaway. That one I've liked a lot. I mean, really, we've seen that at various points over the last couple of years, and we saw it a little bit more last year. And we've seen it now, repeatedly. I think probably like maybe 3 times in the preseason here, and it just looks like a shot that he's gotten comfortable with. And I think the thing I like most about it is, there's kind of different variants of it. It's kind of when he dribbles in a little bit, takes a bump, and then steps back, and then there's kind of the version where he's coming from the side and he sort of pivots into the middle of the lane and rises up and takes that shot. And I just love how high the release is on it, because it's just you can't block it. And I think it's a different release than his normal jump shot. And I think it's just a little simpler release. I think he gets up with really nice touch. And we've seen it repeatedly, not in this preseason, but we've seen it in the past. When he's shooting from the middle of the floor, if he kind of puts it up there and hits front iron, a lot of times it'll bounce in off the back rim and then in. And so that's a reason I like it more kind of going middle than along the baseline. Because again, if you missed on the baseline, you're not getting those sorts of you're not getting that Kawhi friendly bounce against the Sixers in the playoffs. That's just harder to get from the side. So yeah, I like that. And in particular, I like it because to me, it's like a counter, right? Like, he can try to bang a little bit, and if he doesn't immediately find a path to the basket, he can sort of just step back. And it's again, you could say, well, he's settling for it, but to me, it's a counter against the defender when the defender actually does what he's supposed to do. And so again, it's not necessarily the first option. I still don't know that he should be shooting, early clock pull up threes in transition. I don't think that's really, ever going to be a great option for the Bucks in general. But look, he's Giannis. I've never, last year in the playoffs, I understood, do you want him going 1 for 8 from 3-point range in a playoff game? No. You want him to be little measured with how much he shoots threes. But again, I think it's just a matter of kind of building up that repertoire. And if he's feeling good and wants to jack up, a few threes a game, I don't really care, to be honest. I mean, even if he's shooting 30% still, but I think we'll see. I mean, kind of like what we said before, I feel like the perception of Giannis's jump shot is the most sort of results based thing of maybe anything we do as like Bucks fans. When it goes in, everybody thinks his form looks better and he's gotten rid of his hitch and all these other things. And when it's not going in, everybody's like saying, well, it's because he's doing this wrong, that wrong, and some of it there's some truth to that. I mean, I think he's just doesn't have consistent form, and that's part of why he is inconsistent as a shooter. But again, I think it's 2 games now where he's made some jump shots. He missed a couple in the first game, so it's good. Get some confidence and carry it into the regular season. Let's just see what it looks like in the regular season, because we've seen him past few years. He's had a couple of like really cold streaks from 3 to start the year, and I looked it up. I mean, in the previous couple of years, he shot 40% and 36% from 3 in the preseason. So the last couple of years, I mean, he's actually shot the ball from 3 perfectly well in the preseason, and then what has happened in the regular season? Well, it goes away. So it's a long season, and especially if you're a guy like him, he's had stretches where he's made threes, and stretches where he's made jumpers, and that's not new. You just again have to go out and do it every night.
So he said it himself, and this is why I know, Frank, that you're being very low key about the fact that he's knocking down all these shots. Because like Giannis said in the post game, he was asked about that one that bounced on the front rim and then dropped from 3. And it was funny because you could very clearly hear it on the broadcast that as soon as it left his hands, he's like, short, which is just a funny thing to hear from Giannis. I mean, it's like generally you have a good sense for your jump shot if you're a really good shooter. But he goes, yeah, but the stats don't count. He's like, I'm happy it went in, but whatever. It's preseason. The stats don't count. And I immediately thought about you. But his minutes tonight up at 25. So his first preseason game, he was at 17. Then he went up to 21. And then he went up to 25 and definitely got a good sweat up, which is perfect. Because if you are getting a big sweat up with whatever you're doing, we've got the product for you. Look at this. Sweat block. I got it. It came in the mail. I got some antiperspirant wipes here, which is pretty good because they're currently ranked number 1 on Amazon in the antiperspirant category. And I've also got some of this sweat block deodorant as well. So it's we know if you have, I guess a little bit of frustration or embarrassment, whatever it is with sweating, that sweat block wipes are the product for you. There's a dry shirt guarantee. If sweat block doesn't keep you dry, you get your money back. It's been featured and tested on the Rachel Ray Show by firefighters. Now that is an occupation where you can get a bit of a sweat up. There's no doubt about that. So if you or someone you love is dealing with this, you have to check out Sweatblock. You can get it today for 20% off at sweatblock.com with the promo code Locked On, or at Amazon and CVS. So as we get back into it, I did have some feedback on Twitter the other day, Frank, and a listener was very frustrated by the way I transitioned from seeming like I'm making a good point to going to the ad read. So perhaps talking about Giannis's minutes is not the way that he wanted to hear me go into that sweat block read, but hey, here we are. So I was thinking Jordan Nwora was another big takeaway tonight because Chris Middleton was out with personal reasons, as you mentioned. Now, we've been talking about Jordan Nwora, it feels like every single show, because he is one of the more fascinating players on this roster. Not a surprise to me. I assumed when Chris Middleton was out that Jordan Nwora would get the start based on what we've seen with Bud and the way he's gone about the rotation in either years gone by or certainly this preseason. So Nwora played 24 minutes, 15 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal. Didn't start the second half. And I didn't get a chance to ask Bud specifically about that, whether there was something that happened or a reason why he didn't start with the main group. But there's no doubt that they're coaching this guy hard. So I asked Bud specifically, how is he responding to that? Because some people don't like that. I mean, this is a guy that can clearly score. He's clearly got an NBA skill, and they're making him earn every minute that he gets. But he said that he seems to really be enjoying it. He enjoys the feedback. He takes it well. It's just going to be a process of trying to see that on a nightly basis. And I've had people and we've had feedback, and everyone's very passionate about Jordan Nwora. And some people will say, well, he's an NBA level scorer. Play him. You have to play him. I push back a little bit. I like the fact that they're coaching this guy. This isn't the old school Milwaukee Bucks. This isn't Monte Ellis who can score, so let's play him 35, 40 minutes a night. Let's teach this guy how to play basketball. He's young. He's in his second year. Earn the minutes, and then you know that he's not going to lose his scoring touch. That's how I feel about it.
Well, and the reality is in these preseason games, with the big three getting fairly limited minutes, you know, Jordan again has spent most of his time. Most of the impressive stuff we've seen from Jordan has come with him being often the number one option on the floor, which again, it's like great that he can show that he can carry that burden. And if you're playing a game and you don't have Chris Middleton, you love the fact that you have a guy that can be a scorer, because that's an area where you're going to be weakened if you don't have one of your key guys. But I thought it was kind of telling. He started this game. Did you notice Jordan Nwora before he had that fast break layup off a nice pass from Giannis? I mean, he was pretty invisible up to that point. And that's kind of the point I think that we've generally made about, just the challenge of going from being a guy who has the ball in his hands with second units, with third units, garbage time, preseason games. Um, it's just different, the ask of him when he's out there off the ball, watching Giannis dominate, watching Drew dominate, watching those guys play together, and he's having to basically just sort of stay ready and stay in the game, and not kind of float and drift. And I thought when he was out there with the starters, it kind of natural. He's not the focal point of things. And I thought, he was 1 of 9 from three tonight, 6 out of 17 overall, so 5 out of 8 inside the arc, 1 of 9 from deep. And I don't have the splits on his spot up shooting tonight, but he had a bunch of spot up opportunities that just didn't go down tonight. Some open looks didn't go down tonight. And again, that's for him. I think the question is, can he do both, right? Can he be? I think on this team, you're not looking for him to start. Tonight was kind of an unusual situation. And to be honest, I probably would not want to start him. Like, I would start Connaughton over him. And that's not because I think Jordan's, hasn't earned rotation minutes. I just think, again, his skill set makes more sense when the starting lineup is broken up and you don't have all three of your top guys out there. So if you're in a situation where, again, Chris is injured in the regular season, I would start Pat. I would leave Jordan. I would just bring him off the bench, and that way I think he has a better chance of kind of getting a feel for the game, get into the game offensively, and make plays with the ball in his hands a little bit more than what we saw tonight. So, again, it's overall a very encouraging preseason from Jordan, undoubtedly. And I think, again, the silver lining of Shemi Ojale, as well as Rodney Hood, really, I mean, Shemi hasn't played due to this calf strain. We don't know what his status is going into the first game on Tuesday. And then Rodney Hood, getting a brief look and really not looking sharp at all in Utah. I mean, basically, it's Jordan Nwora. Jordan Nwora is in the rotation by default right now, and we'll kind of see what happens with those other two guys. But at this point, you would assume Bud goes 9-10 guys deep to start the season, and I think we generally have a pretty good idea of who's definitely going to play. Right? It's got to be George Hill. It's got to be Pat Connaughton. It's got to be Bobby Portis. Is Bobby Portis going to be healthy on opening night? That's another question. We didn't see Bobby at all here in the preseason. So I think at this point, when you talk about guys who will definitely play off the bench, it's at this point George, Pat, and Jordan. Jordan's number 3, I would say, out of that grouping. And then I think we'll see what happens if Bobby's still out. I think we'll see Thanasis, I'm sure, a little bit. Sandro Mamukelashvili had a really kind of rough end to the preseason after some great moments early. He was basically the backup center here with Bobby out, which I don't think is necessarily his best role. But we'll see. Again, tonight was another night where the starters obviously played. Nobody got over 30 minutes. So, but yeah, I mean, things coming into shape a little bit here ahead of the start of the season on Tuesday. But with Dante out for who knows how long, Shemi's obviously, until we see him, he's out. Rodney Hood, I don't think you can count on anything from him. And with Bobby Portis as well, that's 4 guys that, Hood was marginal, but I think those other 3 guys obviously were people that you expect to see in the kind of 9-10 man rotation. So that spells opportunity for other guys. And I think Jordan's obviously got a huge opportunity. And this is what it comes down to for young players so often, right? Somebody's injured, you get a random opportunity. What do you do with it? And again, if he can, work defensively, try to be unselfish, see the floor, play a role, and when he gets opportunities to have the ball in his hands, make the most of it. Maybe he's a guy that's sixth in the rotation all year, right? I think certainly that Rodney Hood spot. Rodney Hood doesn't have a spot, so we'll see if maybe Jordan Nwora can use this strong preseason as a platform for really cementing himself in the rotation. It's going to be a long season. Guys are going to get hurt, et cetera, et cetera. We all know the drill at this point, but certainly, it's been a sign that Jordan Nwora, I think, is going to get an opportunity, and we'll see if he can take it. But encouraging stuff in the preseason.
No, it certainly is. And we've said this before. I've compared it to Dante coming into his second year. He wasn't in the rotation. And then he got an opportunity through a couple of circumstances. It was early. It was about the 5th or 6th or 7th game of the season, but he got an opportunity down in Orlando. He took that opportunity, and he's been cemented in the rotation ever since that night. So I thought that Rodney Hood was going to be a veteran that the Bucks would try and get on the floor and try and get a good look at him early in the season. But hey, again, as you pointed to, this is the circumstance. Clearly, that foot has flared up again. He looked kind of rough in that first appearance anyway. So there might be some injury concerns there. I mean, they kind of signed him thinking that, who knows? I mean, I don't know what they were thinking, but I certainly looked at it and said, well, this is a bit of an X factor signing. Maybe you find something or maybe you don't. So we'll see what happens with Rodney Hood. But Jordan Nwora is in a good spot. And I think it's fun. It'll be fun for him to start out the season in the rotation. As we look to wrap up this show, we're going to talk about Jon Horst. Before the game, we had some news today. Jon Horst signed an extension. He extended his extension for a few more years. And this is what happens when you're a championship team. Think about Jon Horst and Mike Budenholzer, where they were at going back a few months ago. It's been a good 12-month period for those guys. And now they just get to sit back, put their feet up on the desk, eat Built Bars, and look at highlights of a championship-winning Milwaukee Bucks team. Because I think the celebratory Built Bars are going to be being eaten left, right, and center with the Bucks organization the next couple of days as they head towards Banner Night. Which, by the way, Banner Night
is this an ad read? Wait, is this an ad read? You're confusing me. Is this an ad? Is this just? Are we just riffing here, Kane? Are we just expressing love for Built Bar?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be a Built Bar ad read and a little more official than this, but I started to get a little bit too excited. I wonder if they could, when they hang the banner, if they could hang a giant Built Bar as well at Fiserv Forum. That would be, I would be absolutely into that, because with Built Bar, there's freedom of choice. You can pick whichever flavor you like: coconut, cherry barcia, raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate. They're all there for you, and you can get a mixed box with all the different flavors. If you're not sure which one's your favorite, you can get 2 of each of all the flavors, and then from there you'll be able to decide which one you like the best. They're healthy for you. They're also the official protein bar of the US track and field team, which is pretty cool. So you can go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED, and you'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED for 15% off at built.com. And unlike Sweat Block, I'm not able to show any on the screen, because if I had any Built Bars in my house, they'd already be eaten. So I mean, it's just the way it goes with Built Bar. But Jon Horst, any surprise here, Frank, that they signed him to an extension? It's just so funny to think back. I remember when I was asking you, what do you think was the most chaotic or craziest podcast that you've done since you've been doing this show for as long as you have? And you pointed to the GM search and just analyzing how that went down. And even Marcus Johnson mentioned it on the broadcast tonight. And he says, geez, I hope I don't get fired for saying this. But the hire of Jon Horst was speculative, to say the least. No one outside of Milwaukee knew who he was. And now here we are a few years later. He's got that executive of the year. He's guided the championship. He was able to instigate this extension with Giannis. So I think the extension makes sense. Probably not the start that anyone thought that his GM career would get off to. But geez, it's hard to argue with the results.
Yeah, I mean, it's and my wife just having no respect for our podcasting right now. Just our office is still. Our office is still being built, and it's just a Rockets fan just disrespecting a Bucks podcast over here. Our office is still being renovated, so I'm resigned to sitting here in our kitchen. But but anyway, yeah, it was. I mean, I can only describe the Jon Horst hiring as a King Ralph situation, where it was like, wait, who's left? because John wasn't even the assistant GM. He was like assistant to the assistant GM. No, I think he was technically, what was he, director of basketball operations. I think that might have been his title. I forget, but obviously he worked really closely with John Hammond. He was John Hammond's guy coming over from Detroit in 2008, I think it was. So obviously he had a lot of experience. He'd been in Milwaukee for a long time, and so obviously he had paid his dues, but this was a bizarre situation. The not being able to agree on kind of the obvious move, which was promoting Justin Zanuck, who I think has now become GM of the Jazz. So it worked out for Justin Zanuck in the end, but a very awkward situation with ownership disagreeing. And so yeah, to think that a few years later we'd be sitting here celebrating an NBA championship. It's wild, but again, it just kind of shows you, like you just can never. It's the NBA. It's just very unpredictable, and obviously, there were a number of moves that he made. Hiring Mike Budenholzer obviously was a big one. Again, if things go a little differently last year and they have to fire Mike Budenholzer, again, it's sliding doors. Like things can change a little bit, but we know the reality. We know what happened, and they can never take that away from Jon Horst. They can never take that away from Mike Budenholzer, and they can never take it away from the Milwaukee Bucks and their fans. So, yeah, I think you look at a lot of the, kind of some of the key roster moves they made. First off, of course, Giannis and Chris. Giannis and Chris, it's crazy how long they've been with this franchise at this point, both coming in the summer of 2013. Jon Horst was part of the Bucks when they were acquired. But obviously that was an awesome foundation. And, I think you just look at some of the moves. I think the Brook Lopez signing stands out first and foremost. The Drew Holiday trade might have been kind of the ultimate push your chips in and go for it and pray that it works out type move, given the circumstances of Giannis not having signed his extension at that point, given all the future draft picks that, this is still the reality, right? There's still risk, obviously, that if things don't go your way in the next few years, that you could be feeling not great about that. But clearly it paid off. Yeah, nobody would go back, and no matter what happens from here on out, the Drew Holiday trade will forever have been a great move that paid off. And and I think also, again, there's been questionable moves on the margins. Last summer, obviously, the DJ Augustine signing didn't work out, but I think as our friend Eric pointed out, kind of maybe taking a page out of John Hammond's book. He was able to say, okay, you know what, that signing isn't making sense. Turn DJ Augustine in, and moving whatever it was 8 spots back in the draft. DJ Wilson, who was Jon Horst's first draft pick, which obviously did not work out. By the way, my laundry is done. In case you're wondering about that.
Bunch of Bucks t-shirts just going through the wash for a new week.
A lot of gotta be ready, suited up for next week with Bucks gear. But they were able to turn those kind of decisions that maybe didn't work out so well into PJ Tucker, right? And then Tucker ends up being obviously a key guy in the championship run. So I think ultimately no surprise at all. I think anytime you win a championship and you put yourself, I think most importantly, you put yourself in a position to compete for a championship every year. I think that's really, in many ways, the goal. We obviously obsess over every signing and every move, and ultimately that's important. That's the job of the GM, is to make all the small moves that add up to a team that can contend. But at the macro sense, really what, as a team, I think you really try to do is just get to the point where year in and year out, you have a chance, right? And in any given year, even if you're an awesome team, have the Bucks ever had more than a 20% chance of winning the championship? I don't know that they've ever had more than that. There's a lot of good teams in the league. Stuff happens. But if you give yourself a reasonable chance year in and year out, you have that superstar, you have the supporting cast, you have the infrastructure around those guys. At some point, you just hope that things break your way and things work out, and you make those right bets on the margins and you win a championship. And obviously that's exactly what happened last year. And, I think if you're the Bucks, obviously you have confidence that the group you have and, the infrastructure you have in place, including Jon Horst, that they can continue to keep you in that in that competitive grouping year in and year out. And again, there's no guarantees. But obviously, you look at just kind of what's happened the last few years. They've put themselves in a spot to be competitive every year. And obviously, Jon Horst, Mike Budenholzer, the rest of the organization, they made some bets and they paid off in the biggest way possible last July. So yeah, no surprise at all. And I think, again, difficult to imagine, especially when we go if we rewind back to some of those conversations we were having in like 2017 or whatever it was, difficult to imagine from those depths and just the mess that the organization. Again, it wasn't like Jon Horst's fault that the organization was totally in shambles over a GM hire, but obviously they moved on from it, and here we are. Look at the Paul Rudd gif. Hey, what is
Look
the
at
gift
us.
like? Look at us.
Who would have
Who would
thought?
have thought?
Not me.
Who would have thought? Yeah, not me. Yeah. So yeah, it's a championship. It's the year of a Bucks championship. Gold
Well,
stars for everybody. Let's do it.
it's like Bud when he was on the low post and he said he was going to ask for a 20-year extension. Why not? Why not ask for that 20-year extension?
F it.
What's the worst that could
F it,
happen?
man. F it. Let's do this.
The only last point I'll make, with Horst, while we're touching on this, I mean, you mentioned the Drew Holiday deal. I remember we had a podcast last offseason where it wasn't just like a push your chips in the table, let's see if we can get Giannis to sign the extension, and maybe they had a good idea that it was going to happen. Who knows? But remember, Drew Holiday only had a year as well. I mean,
Yeah.
you could have been out of all those draft picks. No Drew Holiday, no Giannis, no future. Well, nice arena though, nice arena for sure. But
Chris Middleton and Dante DiVincenzo just doing work for the next few years, putting up numbers and winning, 41 games.
Jordan Nwora might have got a scoring title though, and then going back and all the other moves he made. Remember, he got rid of Daly, got rid of John Henson straight away in that deal that brought in George Hill. So look, he's I mean, the one thing I don't think you can an attribute you can't have if you're a GM is you can't be too prideful, and he doesn't seem to be. If he makes a mistake, he's fine with admitting it and moving on. So I think it's a good quality to have. Speaking of making mistakes and moving on from them, the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast with Josh Lloyd. You guys are doing your fantasy drafts right now, and I'm sure plenty of you are going to make some big mistakes. So my advice to you is don't be too prideful. Listen to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Find out where you went wrong and make moves accordingly. You can get that wherever you get your podcast. Hey, Frank, the preseason's over. We've got ring night in about 3 nights. I reckon we should probably try and catch up. The podcast will be back on Monday, but I reckon me and you should try and catch up before opening night and preview that game. I don't know if we've got time to do the over and under podcast, but there's a bit to talk about because Bucks and Nets is only a couple of days away.
You don't want to talk about what we saw from George Hill and Pat Connaughton in the final preseason game? No. Oh man, it's 11:30 at night on a Friday, man. I'm ready to just get into it with some serious deep rotation talk about the preseason. You want to cut it out? Okay.
I'm not ready to talk about George Hill right now because George Hill gave a face of disgust and frustration in himself at one point. And I was like, listen, man, he's just shaking off the rust. I think it's going to be okay. But it was a rough patch for George. He's a veteran. Why does he care about the preseason?
He drove and got to the rim a couple times, which I'm almost more happy about that than like him just hitting some threes. Cause like we've said, like we know he can, I mean, he has a long history of making open threes, right? High 30s or so. So let's just play regular season basketball. I think that's what's on all of our minds. And let's bring all this, 80% Giannis mid-range shooting to the regular season. How about we do it there?
Yeah, I mean, I Danny Morang, who covered the Blazers or still covered the Blazers for a long time, I tweeted a photo of Giannis at that high release point, and he said, that reminds me of LaMarcus Aldridge. I thought it was a great comp. I mean, his release point's so high, did it for years and years in Portland. Maybe Giannis can drop a few jump shots right in LaMarcus Aldridge's face on opening night. That would be fun.
It's funny because the guy I always think of when I think of like getting to like that high release in the post, another former Blazer big man. Can you guess who I'm thinking of?
How old do I have to
You have
be
to go.
to?
You have to go back. You have to go back a few years. He's retired now for a few years. He went from Portland to, I guess, technically Atlanta, and then to Detroit, and then a few other places.
It's escaping me. I really just wanted to.
Ball don't lie. Ball don't lie.
Oh, Rasheed Wallace, of course. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
Rasheed.
thought I wanted it to be a Robin Lopez answer, but yeah.
Man, I miss Robin Lopez still.
Me too. He's doing his research on whether the Bucks won the title, so
Yeah.
hopefully he's okay. All right, this has gotten out of control. Let's get a bit ragged at the end of this podcast. We'll be back on Monday to start opening week. Plenty to discuss ahead of Bucks and Nets. We've got a ring ceremony. Jim Paxley's going to be there. He's going to be the master of ceremonies for that. There's a party.
That's what I wanted. That's all I wanted. I wanted it. He didn't get to be there at the end, so it's only fitting that he gets to be there emceeing ring night. So I'm pumped to see that.
And for those that aren't in the arena, there's a party out in the Deer District as well. They announced that tonight. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to be a fun night in the city, no doubt about that. We're going to preview it all on Locked On Bucks to start the week. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. For Frank and myself, we will catch you guys next week.